Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 2024 preseason power rankings, where we're moving to our 26th ranked team, the Los Angeles Chargers. One of the more intriguing teams in the league, intriguing bad teams in the league, I'd say. Bad in quotation marks.
Yeah,
They've
no,
got,
I think we're at that point where these bad teams, we're finally at the teams that can compete. I think
yes,
now from this point forward, we're at I don't want to say borderline contenders, more of I want to say around this area is
these teams can compete for playoff spots
they can
on
compete
the
for
high
playoff spots.
on the
Maybe
high end.
this area is probably gonna be lower end, but
Yes,
there's a world where they make playoffs or just barely finish outside of them. I think now
right.
we're at that point.
Absolutely agree with you there. And the Chargers, have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They went out and got the most highly cited head coach prospect that we saw in this this offseason cycle. And yeah, I mean, let's just get right into it. Is there anything you want to say before we get into head coach and the culture that he brings?
I mean, no, let's just jump right into the head coach and the culture because I think there's a lot of positive to go over here. Again, I'm just excited because now we're at the point where these episodes start getting really positive, right?
Hmm.
Maybe not overwhelmingly, we still are in the mid 20s, but there's a lot of stuff to like here. There is. And I think the head coach and culture is one of the best things about this team, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
With Jim Harbaugh.
Harbaugh, you said prospect, right? You said head coaching prospect. We've seen this guy go to the Super Bowl before as a
I
head
meant
coach.
more candidate, more
Yeah.
head coaching.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the funny thing. Some of these other guys are prospects, right? Mike
Yes,
McDonald is a prospect. Dave Canales is a prospect.
prospect.
This guy, he's an established head coach. He's done it before. It's just a little bit of controversy that got him out of the NFL, but now that's been swept under the rug because he won another national championship. You know, let's give him his flowers. This is a damn good head coach.
Absolutely, he is. He is. And he's done a damn good job over there in Michigan all these years, man.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about, especially that last season's team, I mean, my goodness. And you want to talk about a team that desperately needed culture, a
Yes.
culture,
Yes.
a
And
good locker room,
yes.
a person to lead this franchise. This was as good of a hire as it got.
Exactly. And here's the thing this guy isn't being hired because he knows some X's and O's. This isn't like a Shanahan situation we got going on here. This is a head coach that is hired to be a head coach. He is hired to gather the troops, rally the troops, get ready to win some football games. Because here's the thing, right? I looked into it a little bit in terms of the Chargers head coaching history, right? Because you said it yourself. Culture. That's the key word here with this hiring. Culture. Under Staley, it was clear you had some players in the locker room that would hear him say something and be like, what the hell does this guy know? What has he done? What has he done that makes him so smart? What makes him worth being the head coach of this football team? Now, he was a great defensive mind, but still, he wasn't deserving of being the head coach. I think there were a lot of people in the locker room saying that even halfway into his first year, right? And before that, what does Anthony Lynn know? Right? What's he got? And really, I look deep into the Chargers head coaching history. This is the first time since Norv Turner that the Chargers have a head coach that has had success in the NFL in the past. This is
Wow.
the first guy when you really look at it. This is going to be a very steady ship, run the way that you would expect an NFL team to be ran.
And I absolutely agree with you. And again, we know the Chargers, outside of even the coaching history, just everything that surrounds this team. They needed something like this. Stability, desperately, man.
Yeah.
And we're excited because now you got one of the best quarterbacks in the league with some stability, with a culture that you can win with, that has been proven to be won with, so or get near winning with. So let's get off of Jim Harbaugh and let's go talk about this offensive coordinator, this offensive scheme with Greg Roman. Greg Roman, he's seen success in the NFL working with Lamar Jackson, and this guy wants to run the football. This guy wants to come out in two tight end sets, pound the rock, get it to his tight ends. Like this is, and it's exactly what Harbaugh wants to do. This is what he did in Michigan with his offense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, you're spot on. You're spot on, right? Roman, there is a little bit of bad stuff to say about him, right? You know,
Of
the
course.
passing concepts, designs are they're not great. They're not great.
Yeah.
But the truth is this is one of the best run play designers in the modern NFL. In modern football,
Yeah.
really. He wants to run a lot of heavier personnel. 12 personnel, 21 personnel, 22 personnel even. He's going to go out there, two running backs, two tight ends. Like, that is what this guy is going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to run the football. That is Greg Roman's offense. And Jim Harbaugh is very in favor of an offense like that. We're going to see some read options. We're going to see some triple options even. He likes to design running plays in that way. A lot of gap scheme. He wants offensive linemen pushing people. Okay, it's
Yep.
not as much about technique as it is about just dominate the guy in front of you on the line of scrimmage. It's not going to be a offense operating too much through the air. It's going to be a ground attack, and they're going to work some play action and take their shots off of that. They're going to be simplistic shots. The passing concepts aren't going to be anything elaborate, but the elaborate part is going to be how these guys are blocking for their lead horse.
Right. And then let's just move from the offensive scheme now to the quarterback. Justin Herbert. In my opinion, one of the five best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I mean, this guy's fantastic. Don't listen to anybody who says otherwise. I just don't get it. The things he's been able to do with the Chargers teams that have been around him, with the weapons that have been around him, with the coordinators that have been around him, it's a breath of fresh air to finally see this guy get some help.
Yeah. No, no, listen, I'm 100% behind you. Again, this offense isn't really designed to open stuff up for the quarterback, but because of that, the quarterback has to be really good to make up for it. Okay?
Yep.
This is an offense where good quarterbacks maybe aren't getting a lot of help, but they are helping the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and I meant it more as like, dude's gonna get a run game.
Yeah,
Dude's gonna,
well, okay, yeah. You're
yeah,
completely right. You are
you know what I
completely
mean.
right.
Like
It's
he
not going to
doesn't
be
have to
all
do
about
everything
him.
himself.
It's not going
Yes.
to be all about him. But when they are asking him to do something, they're asking him to do a lot. Okay?
Yeah.
It's there's not going to be easy completions for
No.
Herbert, okay? But we know Herbert can get the ball into the tight windows. We know he can. We know he can make the right reads. We know he can avoid turnovers. He is a great quarterback in that way. I am really excited to see what Justin Herbert can do with this offense because, yeah, he's not going to be getting a lot of help, but he is going to, like I said, be helping the coordinator. The coordinator shouldn't have to design an elaborate passing concept, route concept, in order to get his receiver open. Justin Herbert should be able to throw him open because
Yeah.
now he's one of those receivers. You just said top five quarter. I said receiver, top five quarterback in the league, right? You're expected to elevate the offense. The offense shouldn't need to elevate you. Okay? They have the running game. They'll get their work done, but when they rely on you, they're relying on you a lot. The good thing is we know Justin Herbert is more than capable of getting it done.
Yes, yes, he is. But let's talk about the help that'll be surrounding Justin Herbert going to these receivers, which admittedly, it's a weak room. It's a weak room of receivers. And we'll start with the guy they picked in the first round last year, 22nd overall pick, Quentin Johnston. I will be the first person to admit he was my top ranked receiver in this class, in that class. So
Oh, really? You're
he
one of
was.
those. You're one of
I
those.
was.
I saw right past it. I just saw Corey Coleman 2.0. That's what I
Well,
saw.
here's the thing with I actually just made a video about Quentin Johnston. I don't think all hope is lost for Johnston. I don't think he's going to be elite. It's clear I missed some things there. But like we're talking about I think it was a grossly misutilized player last year
I
by this
agree.
team.
I agree. Listen, his
I
best
thought
traits are what he can do after the catch. You
yes.
scheme him open and allow him to do work from that spot. Okay?
I
He is not the traditional 6'4" receiver that runs a 4-2. Okay? You do
no,
not use him like that.
he played 11% of his snaps away from being an outside receiver last year. So in the slot or at a different position. They made him an X 90% of the time. When that's just not what you should be doing with Johnson. You want to use the guy creatively, set him in motion, get him the ball quick in his hands because yes, his best attribute in my eyes is his after the catch ability. He has the highest missed tackles per touch percentage in college football since 2020 with 37%.
I didn't know
That's
that.
even
I
that's
did not know that.
37%. The next highest is Malik Neighbors at 30.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's significantly higher than like he's a good after the catch receiver and showed that he showed that when he got the ball in his hands,
Yeah.
when he caught the ball this year, like a third of his receiving yards this year came after the catch.
I think the problem is that teams saw 6'4", runs a 4.2, and then just assumed he would be out there able to, make contested catches and do all that stuff, and it just wasn't his game. It simply was not his game at all. It never was. Even in college, he was 6'4", but Josh Downs was a far better contested ball catcher.
Yep.
Far better. Like, he was, and Josh Downs is 5'10". So, yeah, like Quentin Johnston, he's 6'4", but treat him like he's 5'10", is my point. Because even though he's 6'4", he doesn't even have a large catch radius. He doesn't make catches outside his frame. He barely makes catches in his frame, right? I think Quentin Johnston is more of a gadget guy than anything, and they really drafted that in round 1.
So here's I think he's overdrafted at this point. Absolutely, I do think drops are a fixable thing. Like
yeah, but it's not just that he can't separate.
I know.
He can't separate.
I know, but that's why I'm saying I'm not saying he's gonna be a superstar. I'm saying you use him properly. I think he can be a contributor on a team. I think
he can be a contributor. But the thing is, I mean, we look at the rest of this receiver core. Did they get other slot options? Like, I think they're planning on treating him like an outside receiver again. Maybe not an X, but it looks like possibly a Z. And I just don't think that's even worse. I mean, I think they really have him there expecting him to become this contested catch artist when that's just never been his game.
That's the thing. I think they know, because from recent interviews, from what I've heard from Herbert and what I've heard from like Greg Roman, they know they kind of don't have that in him. Greg Roman's talked in length about moving him around and like using him in certain scenarios. So I trust Greg Roman enough to do that. And I think if he does, you're going to see a different Quinn Johnson than we saw last year. I'm not saying some elite player. I'm not saying even a good player. Just like not awful. He's not going to be awful.
I think he's a gadget guy. Like, that's what I think Johnston is. I just am worried about him not being treated that way. Or not being treated like he's only that.
Yeah, right. So let's move on, and we'll talk about the guy who will most likely, I think, play the X role in this offense, and that's going to be Josh Palmer. That's who I think is most likely going to be the X.
It's going to be interesting to see how this receiver core looks, because I think there's a lot of ways to treat this other guy that we're probably going to be talking about shortly. Their second-round pick, Ladd McConkey. We're going to get to him when we get to him, but I think there's a lot of different ways they could use him. But I do think there is a world where it plays out exactly how you're saying. Joshua Palmer being the X. Johnston, I guess you're assuming he'll be the slot or the Z what?
I think he'd probably be the third receiver on this, so I'd be Ladd being the Z.
And so then, Ladd being the Z and then Johnston in the slot?
Johnson in the slot, or just like he comes in.
I could see it playing in that. I could see it playing out that way. I have it as McConkey as the X. Then Palmer as the, I guess, slot, and then Johnston as the Z. But I think they're going to be moving those guys around.
I think no one has a secured spot on this receiving core.
Correct. And I think
so. I think they're going to be moving.
I think that's a good thing in a lot of ways, right? It's good that you have that versatility, especially McConkey. Now, I think there are some guys like Johnston, who we were just talking about, where you're just throwing him somewhere and hoping that it sticks. You're throwing him all over until you find something that sticks. But for McConkey, I think it's more of a case of he could work everywhere, which is a good thing. And I think it's the same with Palmer. Palmer, let me say right now, I don't know if he's quite this, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, but I do know for a fact he has one of the broader skill sets out of the receivers in the NFL. Like, he has a lot. He has a wide variety of ways that you could utilize him. He does. And he has a very complete skill set.
And another guy who I think will get some X reps for sure is DJ Chark. I don't think he's some special player, but he's going to get a lot of X reps in my eyes, because he is a traditional X in the sense of the word. You know what I mean?
X or a Z. I think of him more as a Z. But yeah. I'm completely behind you there. Because he's not this overwhelming route runner, but he's a possession catcher. That's what he is. And he does a good job at that role. He's a textbook possession receiver. He's not the greatest possession receiver on earth, but he's their wide receiver 4. And I think he plays that role pretty well for a wide receiver 4.
And I also assume that Brendan Rice has a role.
Yeah.
I don't think he's. I don't think Brendan Rice is ever going to be like
Mhm.
wide receiver 2 caliber
No.
player, right?
Oh, but as a
But
wide
like
receiver 5, sure.
you're feeling good. You're
Yeah,
feeling good about it. He's
absolutely.
a guy, solid hands. He's
Mhm.
very solid in kind of aspects of his game. He's an all right route runner.
Very good. Very good. I mean, it showed a lot with Caleb Williams, right? Very good at helping the quarterback in those backyard ball situations,
Yep.
right? He's someone I think when you're running the 2 minute drill, you really want him out there
Right.
because there's going to be some off script plays, and then he makes most of his plays off script.
Physical player. He's a good blocker,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
loved in this Jim Harbaugh kind of offense. So,
Hmm.
and that could be said about Lad McConkey as well. Lad McConkey's a
Oh
really
yeah,
good
hell
blocker.
of a
Lad
blocker.
McConkey's a hell of a
Hell of a
blocker.
blocker.
Johnston was a good blocker last year. That's the one thing I can say he did well,
Mhm.
which out of a receiver position, maybe not the greatest thing, but still.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I think all these guys are good blockers. Chark,
and
Palmer, I
yeah,
think that was very clearly a point of emphasis.
and the last guy I kind of want to talk about in this room is Cornelius Johnson. I had like out of late round receivers, I liked Cornelius Johnson quite a bit. He has intangible wise, nice speed, good height, good size. He's physical. He knows Michigan's offense, because this style of offense because he played at Michigan with Harbaugh. Good blocker. I expect him to make this roster. How much of an impact does he have? I don't know, but he has intangibles. Like he's probably one of the more athletic receivers in this room, if we're talking
Mhm.
strictly athleticism. So just a guy I wanted to point out.
Yeah, no, he's going to be interesting. Again, that familiarity with Harbaugh is obviously going to play a large role. I want to talk about these running backs now, though. And
Mhm.
tell me this: how much of an impact do you think the running back position really has on a Roman offense?
I think it has an impact. I
Hmm.
think the blocking and offensive line is a much bigger impact.
Yeah.
So it's not as much like unless you have a special talent back there at running back. I think for the most part, if you have an average to good running back there, they're gonna play well if this offense is
Hmm.
blocking like Greg Roman wants them to do.
Yeah, and listen, I'm in complete agreement there. I just wanted to say that before we get into these backs because these backs like they're exactly what you said. They're good, but they're not special. You got J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Both of them worked with Greg Roman in the past.
Hmm.
And let me just remind you right now, the 2019 Ravens had the single season best rushing offense in terms of rushing yards, with their lead horse being the Husk of Mark Ingram. Okay, like that wasn't because of their offense ball carriers. All right, it
Right.
wasn't. And by the way, Gus Edwards was also on that team. He rushed for 700 yards that year. But it wasn't about their ball carriers. It was about
Right.
the offensive line, and it was about the scheme that they were running. It was about the concepts that they were using blocking. It was about how well they were able to pull their linemen, how well Ricard, as the fullback, was able to block. That's what it was about. My point in saying that is that Greg Roman doesn't really care about having those elite backs. He just he just wants guys that can get the ball, hold the ball, not fumble, and then hit the hole. And J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards do that, and they do it well.
And the other guy, third guy in this room, I was a big fan of him in this draft. He was one of my one of the running backs I like, Kamani Vidal. He's a good player, man. He's got some juice to him, and I'm excited to see what he does. 5'8", 215, thick back. He's a powerful runner. I think he contributes to this offense. Again, this is going to be much more of a committee
Yeah,
based offense.
but
Whoever's the
it
hot
always
hand,
is. It always is
but
under Roman.
I fully expect Kamani Vidal to be a
He
pretty
could
key
push the
contributor.
pile. He could push the
Yes.
pile, and that's what they need. That's what they want. It's not always going to be wide open lanes. That's when Vidal gets his yardage. In those dirty, foggy windows, right? That's what he does. Very important aspect of the running game too is their running backs, or sorry, their fullbacks and their tight ends. Okay,
Hmm.
and
And you want to
they clearly have a type. They clearly
Oh,
have a type.
very, very clearly. You don't sign Will Disley unless you want a blocking
Hmm.
possession tight end. And
Yeah,
that's what you're getting with the guy. Hayden
him,
Hurst
Hurst.
kind of, yeah.
They all are these like blockers. Even Parham. I think Parham is a nice like receiving threat in the red zone.
Yeah.
But all of them block first, pass catch second.
I'll tell you this, the Chargers had like a crush on Stone Smart for a very like 2 years for some reason, and he's here. I don't know how much Greg Roman values him, but I know Chargers staff apparently raved about Stone Smart while he was there. So he's there, and then of course fullback. You have Ben Mason,
Yeah.
and he's a good
We
fullback, man.
yeah, we haven't really seen him much in the NFL, but he did work with Roman in the past. And I mean, he's just like the guy who started over him when he was with Roman in Baltimore.
Hmm.
He's just like Ricard. Big guy. He's going to move people, block. Definitely a blocker. He's not going to be getting the ball. Okay? He is there to move people. He's a blocker. He's a lead blocker. He is going to move people. Yet again,
Yep.
like that's what he's here to do. Right? You're running power. You need that lead blocker. Okay, he got it, and he's popping linebackers. Ben Mason in a Greg Roman offense. Man, I'm excited to see it.
Very excited. And now we can move to what we've been alluding to is the highlight of this offense, and that's the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get right into it, talking about left tackle Rashawn Slater. Fantastic player.
Oh, yeah. I think this is the player a lot of their season is going to depend on this guy right here and his health, right? Rashawn Slater, very good pass blocker, but that's not what they're relying on him for. It's going to be about his run blocking ability, and yeah, he's a good run blocker. Is he going to be this complete body mover? I mean, we've seen flashes of it, but we need him to become like a Penny Sewell because they want to run behind this guy. They
Yeah.
do. And while I think he's good, I think now we need to see him kind of take a step up into that elite tier of run blockers because he's not someone you see really moving people too far down the field. Okay, he's a good run blocker. I'm not saying he's bad, but we need to see him become like elite because they want someone to run behind.
Right. I absolutely agree with you there. And then you move to the left guard spot in Zion Johnson. Now, I liked Zion Johnson when he was coming out. I think he's been a little bit underwhelming. What's your opinion on Johnson?
He's been underwhelming for sure. I mean, he was a first rounder. When you drafted guard in round one, you need him to be a lot better than he's been, and he hasn't been bad. He really hasn't. But you definitely want him to be better than he has been. He's not someone that has been out there. He's not someone who. Again, it should be interesting. We saw him pull a little bit last year under Kellen Moore, but he didn't really seem great at that. He hasn't been a great zone blocker either. Like he seems like nothing overly special. Another guy, he's not moving people the way that you need to move people if you're going to be this run heavy offense.
Right. And then we go to center. And this is an interesting point to touch on because Corey Linsley, unfortunately, for this Chargers team, just retired this offseason. And Linsley was kind of the heart and soul of this offensive line, man. He was very good. And they're going to sorely miss that. Now, Bradley, you could do a lot worse than Bradley Bozeman, I think. Absolutely. But definitely a downgrade from Linsley.
Definitely a downgrade, but again, I think stylistically, you almost rather a Bozeman in terms of style because Linsley was very similar to what I was saying with Slater as a run blocker. He'll get to the spot, he'll prevent people from making the tackle, but he's not like this hole maker, right? He isn't paving the way for running backs. I think Bozeman has a little bit more when he's a run blocker. I think he has the ability to kind of pave the way a little bit more. And I think for that reason, this could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise. Now, I think Linsley was the better player, but I'm just saying stylistically, I think Roman feels pretty good about this change.
Right. When we move to the right guard and Jamari Sawyer. And this is interesting because he did a really good job filling in at right tackle his rookie season. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Then they're like, oh, we got a guy. Let's put him at guard. And he wasn't bad last year, but again, not a guy I'm overwhelmingly excited about. He's also not a people mover. It's just not his game. And even as a pass blocker, I think he's definitely the weakest link along this offensive line.
Yeah. Him or Zion Johnson.
Yeah, it's between the two guards.
I'm with you on this. Like you said, he was a good tackle because he had to deal with less power. His game is way more built on agility. It's not one of engage with the opposing player and move him. Like, that's not his game, like we said. And, again, the thing is, we're saying that about a lot of guys, and this is not an offense that works like that.
No.
This is not. I think it's going to be very different from the other Roman offenses as a result. But, again, we'll see when it happens.
And then we look at their first round pick in Joe
Mm-hmm.
Alt.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have enough good things to say about this guy. He
Mm-hmm.
is the whole package at tackle. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the best player on this offensive line by the end of the season.
Yeah.
Like
My,
he's that good of a player.
I want to. A lot of people know the good stuff with Alt, and obviously I think he's a great player too. My only knock on him, and this is a very niche thing, especially for him being a rookie, but him being as tall as he has to really plant himself and like really lower his ass in order to tank a bull rush. I think if you work a power to speed, which not many people have in their bag, but it's a go to of like a Shaquille Barrett, if you work a power to speed, that can really work against him because when he lowers his hips, because again he has to lower them so much because his natural leverage is awful because he's so tall. When he lowers his hips, he can't really move as well because he's lowering them so much, and that allows you to work a power to speed and get around him. I don't want to say with ease, but it is definitely the most vulnerable part of his game. But once again, so few edges have that type of move in their bag. Okay, so few, and because of that, Joe Alt. I mean, this is like a near perfect player. Now, again, I don't really consider him a people mover. I don't, but very good at getting to a spot as a run blocker. Very good at getting to the second level. I mean, great second level guy. Superb athlete. Superb technique. Just overall a great player. Like, listen, I look at this offensive line. There's a lot of refined, well put together guys. Again, it's just a concern of you. This is an offensive line you kind of want to be less refined. You kind of want to trade some of that stuff for just straight up caveman strength. And I don't see enough of that to run this type of offense.
And that is a concern to a degree, but you have Justin Herbert back there as well, and you want to
Yeah.
keep him safe. And to a degree, you're happy about having refined players along this offensive line that will be keeping him safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, that I agree with. They seem built to protect this quarterback, and they seem good for like a zone runs type of scheme, and that's why it's weird seeing this Roman mix with these guys. Maybe they do run a lot more zone than I think they will, but I look at a zone team, a team with this personnel running a lot of zone. I don't think they can run zone quite enough to be this, extremely run heavy team. And that's where I kind of fire back against the allegations of the Chargers being this super run heavy team that's going to waste Justin Herbert's talent. Like, look at the personnel. I don't think they can win too many games just running the ball.
Oh, and I completely agree with you. I think this Chargers team has better run game than Justin Herbert's had these every year of his career per se. But they're gonna lean on Justin Herbert. You
Yeah.
can't have a player back there and not lean on him.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but looking at this roster.
Yeah. But if that's the case, I kind of question the Roman hiring in that case. Because I mean, Roman, as great as he is at designing the run game, you don't have the personnel to take advantage of that, one. And two, he's not a great passing game designer. So I have some questions in terms of the fit of Roman. But again, we'll see. I have a lot of faith in Harbaugh.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it boils down to, right? The faith in Harbaugh. I personally think we're going to see very, very, very play action heavy team. I think we're going to see it
Yeah.
like one of, if not the highest play action percentage in the league type
Mm-hmm.
stuff, where they're like, you look at Harbaugh, that reputation, you look at Roman, that reputation, they're going to run the ball, but they know who they have back there. They know their personnel. Play action
Mm-hmm.
is going to be a huge part of this offense.
Yeah, listen, I'm completely behind you. That's always a part of these offenses, right? Harbaugh is a big play action guy. I also think Justin Herbert in the run game will be a big thing. I think we're going to see him on the QB option a lot more. I think he's going to set his career high in rushing yards, right? But let's go into the offensive superlatives. Offensive player of the year, I imagine we have the same guy.
Yeah, it's Justin Herbert.
Yeah, without a doubt. Herbert,
Without a doubt.
we know how good he is. Rocket right arm, smart player. Come on, this is easy. Almost as easy as offensive rookie of the year. We both have Joe Alt, no?
Yes, of course we
Yeah.
have. I was a little concerned you had McConkey, but
No,
no,
no.
yes,
I mean, listen, McConkey, I think is going to have a good season, but Joe
I do
Alt is
too.
Joe Alt. I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
Joe Alt is Joe Alt,
Yeah,
man.
I don't think he's quite generational, but still a ridiculously good prospect.
He's if he's not generational, he's close to it.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
he's the close to
Very,
you get
very,
without
very good
without
player.
being
Yeah.
generational.
Now, 12th man. Is this on offense for you?
My 12th man of the year is not on offense for me.
Mine is.
Okay.
I have Ben Mason.
I love it. I love it.
Again, the Greg Roman offense, they depend on the fullback. Ben Mason is a big guy, good blocker. I don't know how much gap they're going to be running, but when they do, Ben Mason's going to be out there and he's going to be a key contributor. Even when they're running zone, I think he's going to pave the way for their horses. X Factor of the year, you have that here? No.
Yeah, the X factor for me is Quentin Johnston. In the sense of like,
yeah, that's a good pick.
if he can be good, if he can not even live up to his draft type, if he can be a serviceable receiver too at this point, like that helps his offense. That helps Justin Herbert a lot. You know what I mean? And if they use him correctly, what he can do after the catch can be huge for what they want to do here. So I think Quentin Johnston being good is a big deal for this offense. It makes this receiving core look a lot better.
Listen, I'm not going to disagree. That's a pretty clear pick. I just like my choice a little bit more. But that is on the defensive side of the ball, so you don't get to hear it. You're going to have to wait a little bit.
I'll wait a little bit.
For now, though, defensive scheme. How do we feel about Jesse Minter and the defense?
Jesse Minter. He's our second now of what I would consider Mike Macdonald disciples.
Yeah.
In the sense that he worked with him when Mike Macdonald was at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh's like, I want my Michigan-style defense to come with me. And I'm sure in his head he's like, this guy worked with Mike Macdonald, who I know to be a very damn good defense coordinator. So let's bring him over. And we've touched on the Macdonald defense already in the past video. Yeah. We're going to touch on it in multiple other videos going forward.
And this video is no exception. All right?
Exactly.
Macdonald, what he did last year was a lot of blitzes, creative fronts. You said it in the last video where we talked about him, the Titans video. The big thing that he did, he separated the terminology and the play call. He made sure that they could run all of their blitzes from all their different fronts. Correct. And he kind of isolated that from the front that was being ran, and that created a lot of versatility in terms of how they could run different stuff. Coverages were also constantly disguised in the Macdonald scheme. I don't think the disguised coverages are going to be much of a thing for Minter. I don't, because that wasn't really something he did in college, but that might also be because in college you don't have to disguise coverages as much. Right. I do expect everything in terms of the front, which is the base of the Macdonald defense. I do expect that to remain the same. The crazy fronts, the insane changes and maneuvers with the players up front, right? You're going to have your nose tackle playing on the edge. You're going to have your corner coming in as a linebacker. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of those changes going on all the time. Jesse Minter is going to blitz his corners. That's what he likes to do. He's going to blitz a lot, and he's going to put 5 on the line of scrimmage a lot. I think that's the biggest difference between this and the Macdonald defense, by the way. He's obsessed with stacking that line of scrimmage with 5. He does it all the time, and Macdonald does a lot too. But, Minter takes it to a whole nother level. In fact, you could make an argument, like, his base defense might as well be Penny, right? The 5-1. Like, they run it all the time. They run it all the time.
And I think it's going to be interesting watching what he does with his defensive roster, because there is some, like, high-level talent. There's also some low-level talent starting. It's a very up and down kind of a defensive roster, I should say.
Yeah.
And what do you think the strongest part of this roster on defense is?
Ooh. I want to say, like, the problem is we're looking at it defensive line, linebackers, DBs, so I'm not going to say, like, edge, right? Although I do think edge is the strongest part, but I don't really like their interior.
So let's just start with the defensive line.
Okay.
And we'll start with those edges, and we'll start with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. And I want to start with Khalil Mack, because Khalil Mack was fantastic last year.
Quietly, right? You think, this man must be washed, but no, he's not coasting off name value. He's still a really good player.
No, he was. This was amazing last season for his age and what he what we know him to be. And but then you look across at Joey Bosa, and I am less optimistic about
Yeah.
Joey Bosa.
Joey Bosa, let me tell you right now, he really fell off.
Yes.
He really fell off. Even when he's healthy, he is not that good anymore. He really isn't. But yeah, what you said about Khalil Mack, I mean, he's like the ageless wonder, man. He goes out there, he's not really winning with technique either. He's just like bull rushing people, and he still dominates people from a strength perspective. And what's crazy too, we know him for his pass rushing prowess. He's a better run defender. Even today, he's still a great run defender. Khalil Mack, let me tell you right now, he does a really, really good job. But Joey Bosa, he's someone that's supposed to win with technique, but we just don't see it anymore. I don't think he has the speed anymore. I think he gets overwhelmed at the point of attack sometimes. Like, he is not this great player anymore, really.
Like tell you this, the Dolphins week 1, the game I went to, they left Austin Jackson, who got better this season for sure.
Definitely.
Like he's
He
a
was a good
serviceable
player.
right tackle, good player. But like that guy dominated Joey Bosa week 1. It wasn't even a challenge for him. Joey Bosa was on the ground multiple times.
And you can't make the argument that it's like, oh, Joey Bosa's hurt. It was week 1 of the season. Like, I don't think we can. I think for a while we've been saying, oh, Joey Bosa's great. He just has to be completely healthy. He plays through injury too much. No, I think he's just at a point where he just can't do it. I think he really is.
There.
But I'm not saying that this edge room is, overly impressive just because of the two guys.
It's deep.
Yeah, it's deep. It's deep. I'm going to start with the slightly less exciting one. Bud Dupree is a nice role player as their fourth edge. He's someone you can put out there, and he's going to do a good job as a run defender, as a complementary pass rusher. He's good. Not great, he's good. These are 3-4 outside linebackers. They could spot drop a little bit. I think all these guys could spot drop pretty well. But the really exciting name to me is Tuli Tuipulotu. I was not a big Tuli guy coming out of college.
Neither was I.
But last season, he killed it.
He did.
He really did. He was a rotational guy, but he was doing amazing work as an edge.
And I'm totally with you. And not to spoil your 12th man, but I have a feeling I know who your 12th man of the year is, but I do have a reason for not picking that person. I have completely, in my heart, think that one of the two or both, and Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack's getting traded this season.
Notice that I already said my 12th man.
Oh, did you?
I said Ben Mason.
I just started talking about myself, dude. Damn, I don't know why.
Yeah, you just showed your hand a little bit.
I did. We'll get there, but we'll get there anyway. We'll edit that out in text. Anyway.
Will I? maybe I expose you.
maybe I'm exposed for the fraud I am. But we'll move to the interior now, and much less exciting.
They have a type.
They do.
They have a type. I don't listen. I mean, Poona Ford is still a good gap filler.
Yep.
I don't.
Morgan Fox is good for what he does. Solid for what they want him to do.
Yeah. Like they do things. Like they're gonna contribute. They're not gonna be liabilities.
Right.
Sometimes, when you're throwing the ball, they will be. When you're throwing the ball, Poona Ford ain't doing much. Let's be honest here. He is not doing much. But, running the ball up the middle is going to be kind of difficult because of him. But again, I look at the team. I think they need a little bit more pass rushing juice from the interior. Again, they will benefit from this crazy blitz-heavy scheme. I don't know how much that matters, though, when you have Poona Ford completely unable to push the pocket.
Right. And, I mean, you look at the depth. Christopher Hinton, Scott Matlock. I mean, the rookie Justin Aboigbe, and again, I didn't like him that much.
Compare this to the other McDonald schemes. Listen, look at how Mike McDonald.
Go watch the Titans video. Right.
That, but also just look at how Mike McDonald ran his defense last year. Constant rotation, in and out. So many guys. They don't have the ability to do that. They have the ability at the edge rusher position, not on the interior. They don't have the depth. I mean, maybe some of these guys really impress us, but at the moment, none of these names really excite me much. And, I mean, you get to the depth, it's bad. Like, I don't think there's guys you could rotate in, and that sucks because you have guys that you would like to be able to rotate out.
Yep, absolutely. But we'll move on from the defensive line now to the linebackers. And I like this linebacker room.
It's all right.
I really like the rookie Junior Colson, who I think is going
Okay.
to be green
Me and
dot
you,
day one guy.
yeah, me and you are a little bit. Now, listen, I will say this: Junior Colson can play that same role that Roquan Smith played, as this, he's not going to plug gaps. He isn't, but he could get around blockers. He could avoid them, and he's a good coverage guy. Like he could contribute in that way. Although I don't love the scheme fit because yeah, I know he worked with Minter in the past. I don't really like him much as a blitzer. I don't. Uh, Again, I like his coverage ability, but I think he could be a little bit hesitant versus the run. It doesn't seem like he recognizes different blocking schemes overly well. His angles of pursuit aren't great. I'm just reading my notes right now. Listen, there's some good stuff about him. Like I said, the coverage is spectacular. He hits hard. He's disciplined, and he's a solid tackler, but I'm not big on this guy. I'm really not. I think he's good. Like, he's a starter, but he's not someone that I think. He doesn't move me, really.
He moves me. I liked what I saw on film with Junior Colson. He was my third ranked linebacker, and again, just I think he's green dot guy day one. He knows this defense and what
Yeah,
Minter's going to
I
call
think
plays.
that's how he's going to contribute a lot up here. And they have another guy that's like a field general in Denzel Perriman.
And
I
Denzel
think
Perriman, who
that's going to be the
bowling
role.
ball. He's a bowling ball man.
Yeah, but I
Denzel
also
Perriman.
think he's someone that's been around the league. He knows what he's seeing. You have two smart linebackers, and I guess that's the top priority, clearly, for Minter. He wants guys that are smart, that know what they're doing, been there, done that. Junior Colson's going to contribute up here because he knows the scheme. Denzel Perriman's going to contribute with his brain because he has seen everything there is to see.
And I think there's a guy that is going to end up getting some reps as well, and Dion Henley, who I liked in last year's draft as a linebacker. And he was one of those athletic type of dudes. I don't think he's a great fit in this scheme,
Yeah, no.
but I don't think he's good fit in this scheme at all. But it's a name I want to bring up because it's somebody I liked, and I
Yeah,
thought
and
he's
he's
one of
someone
these
they
guys.
invested in last year.
Exactly,
Now, that was Staley's pick. I thought he was a better fit for the Staley defense.
absolutely is.
Yeah. But listen, he's a nice coverage guy. Like, he can do some stuff. If they really are worried about, like, if they're playing, like, the 49ers, I think that's when he really has a role because, yeah, you have Colson on one guy, but who is Perriman going to cover, right? Perriman isn't covering Kittle, or Perriman definitely isn't covering McCaffrey. Okay, let's put
Mhm.
Henley out there because
Yep.
there's a running back and a tight end we're worried about. Like, I think that's the type of situation we got going on here. But I digress. Let's move on to these DBs because this is like the big area of concern for me.
Yeah, this is where this is the area of concern for me as well. We're going to start with Asante Samuel, who's the best DB. Well, not the best overall DB in this
Well,
group. It's
Derwin's
close.
been on and off, and
Yeah,
he's been in this weird limbo where like good one game, really bad the next. He's been all over recently, so I don't
right.
know.
So Asante Samuel, he's listed as the team's outside corner. I think he's a much better nickel corner than he is an outside corner. Personally, I think that's what his skill set. I think that's where he's most effective. Not that he's a bad outside corner, but
No,
but
no.
I just think to get the most out of his skill set, nickel's the place where he should be. But let's just hypothetically say that's the case. My prediction for the starting corners for this team is Christian Fulton as an outside corner, and if Asante's playing the slot, I'm probably picking Cam Hart to come in as a
Yeah,
rookie and start.
no. See, that's the thing. Cam Hart, I like as like a outside guy. I do. I think there's a lot of upside there, and then being a younger team, or team that's trying to get younger, I think Cam Hart has every right to be getting reps. He's a big dude. Like he's
Big dude.
big. Now again, his hips can be a little bit stiff at times, but instinctive. He's a good tackler. I I like a lot of the stuff that I see from him. I see potential with this guy. I don't really see a day one guy, but I see a lot of potential with him.
Yeah,
Now,
and then you look at that and you're like, those starters, while not fantastic, could do worse than Christian Fulton and outside, Cam Hart outside, and Asante Samuel Jr. in the slot. The depth is where we get oh no,
yeah,
because the depth's awful.
uh huh. I agree. I agree. And listen, I don't even know how strongly I feel about Christian Fulton. I really don't. Like you could do worse. You could definitely do
You could
worse.
that's my
I
whole point
definitely
of you
feel
could do
yeah
worse than Christian Fulton.
yeah. I'm behind you on that. The depth is bad though. There's not
Depth
many
is
options.
really bad. But then you look at the safeties, and you have Derwin James, who
Hmm.
ideally, if we're looking at this like a McDonald offense, would play that Kyle Hamilton role.
Yeah. But
Is he
again, is
just
that going to be Minter's? I think Minter's style is going to differ the most from McDonald.
Oh, absolutely, because he did have that year in college to make his,
Yeah. And
he's the
I
defensive
think
coordinator over there.
McDonald changed so much since entering the NFL. So much. And
Right,
you're not going to have those changes with Minter, for
right.
better
But
or
that
for
is
worse.
either way, that's kind of the role Derwin James plays anyway. That box safety.
Well,
He's gonna
I could also see a world where Derwin is that nickel. It's just then who plays
absolutely.
safety.
Then who plays safety,
Yeah.
right? And you do have one other. I really like Aloe Gilman. I think he's a really underrated player. I thought he put together a really good season last year for what it was. I have zero worries about him playing free safety. I'll be honest.
Hmm.
It's everybody else in that room that I'm like, all right, well, we're done. Tony Jefferson isn't
Yeah.
going. We're not moved. We're not moved
Yeah,
by
no,
Tony
we're not. We're
Jefferson.
not. We agree. We like the starters here.
Yes,
We just don't really like the depth at all.
correct, correct.
And
It's
that's their
bad,
issue. Yeah, that's their
and that's
issue.
kind of what you're gonna get with this. Like you kind of knew that going into this team. Lacked a lot of talent. It
Mm-hmm.
lacks a lot of talent. It doesn't have the depth to where you can be comfortable doing, like, be comfortable having depth. I don't know if there's a better way to put that. The starters are good. Again, it's my example of the highs are high. Like there are some good level starters. It's just after that it drops
Mm-hmm.
dramatically in talent. You're kind of putting all your cards on the table with those starters.
Yeah. No, I'm once again, I'm behind you 100% on that. Now, let's move over to the defensive superlatives. Okay. Uh, Derwin James is my defensive player of the year. I think with Minter, he's going to have a return to form. I don't know exactly what role he's going to play, but I have confidence they'll find a creative way to utilize him and maximize his talent. Who's your defensive player of the year?
It's also Derwin James. Yeah, I
Okay.
think
So we're in
I'm
agreement.
totally with you there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe you'd go Khalil Mack, but I think you
Again,
might rotate a bit.
as I kind of mentioned, well, we'll do defensive rookie of the year first. For me, that's going to be Junior Colson. I
Uh
think
huh.
he's going to get the most reps out of any of these defensive rookies. I like him. I think he's going to play well for a rookie
Yeah.
linebacker. So that's my pick. I'm
Listen,
not sure if you.
I'm not anti Coleman or
Yeah.
Colson. Sorry, I
Yes.
like Junior Colson. I think he's a good player. I just don't think he's quite this stud. Some people are acting like he is. Still, though, he's my defensive rookie of the year. Come on now.
Right. And now we're
But
going to move to
yeah,
my 12th
your
man.
12th man, my X factor.
Yeah. 12th man of the year for me, Tuli Below. That absolutely is for me. And here's the thing. I kind of felt weird about picking this because I think he's going to be a rotational guy, but I
Mm-hmm.
also believe that Joey Bosa and or Khalil Mack are going to get traded at some point this season. Like I just to
Mm-hmm.
free up cap room, to make room for the future, what's going on there. So I think he's going to get more of a full-time role as the season goes along, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't know that quite yet. If it sticks as a rotational piece, Tuli's our guy. Tuli's awesome, man.
Yeah. No, I agree. Obviously, for me, I think Thule's success is going to determine a lot about the quality of this football team because them having that truly elite pass rushing edge is so important, and that allows Khalil Mack to really become that much more successful at his age. I also think with their blitz heavy scheme, Thule, if he's a good player, can really wreak havoc.
I love it because last year, sorry to interrupt, but like,
No.
well, in college for one, something Thule did a lot was they would line him up as a linebacker over guards
Mm.
on blitzing situations, and he would be in a 2 point stance, just ready to go. And then they did that last year with him as well on obvious passing downs. It'd be Joey Bosa on the outside, Khalil Mack on the outside, and they'd put Thule over a guard as a linebacker, and he'd
Mm.
rush over a guard. I think that's a perfect fit for this style of
Yeah.
defense, the way they like to blitz and things like that.
Mm-hmm. No, listen, I completely agree. And then they're occasionally going to have him drop, or maybe they have him rush, and then they have Khalil Mack drop into that middle zone. Like that's the type of
Yeah.
stuff these McDonald coaches will do. Let's talk about special teams now. Darius Davis is currently listed as their special teamer. That's or their return man. That's not really where I'm leaning. Of course, with these new rules, I think this is way more of a big play potential type of thing, and because I think Quentin Johnston is a better pick, put one of your best athletes out there. Do you
Yep.
disagree? Do you see someone else you might want to throw out there?
I think Darius Davis gets his reps, but Quentin Johnston's going to get his touches out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of about where it ends for me. I don't see a ton of players who are really electric in that point of the
Lad,
game.
maybe?
Maybe, but he's also somebody I see being on the field a lot, and
Yeah,
I'm
but
not sure
even
they want to.
so, that was kind of how I approached this early on. But the more we've done this, the more I thought to myself, like, this can be such a big play. And we're
Yeah,
expecting it to be such a big play. That's why when we were talking about doing these episodes, we agreed it's important that we hit on this.
yeah,
And because it could be such a big play, I think teams will be way more willing to put their best players out there.
yeah. No, I can agree with you as well. But is Ladd somebody you want returning kicks? I think he's good after the catch. I don't think he's like
That's
some
fair. I
special
think
player
I
at
just
that point of
thought
the
it
game.
might be an idea we want to entertain
I
a
think it's
little
a
bit.
worthwhile entertainment. I think it's
Yeah.
worth to entertain that idea. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there a corner maybe you look at? I mean,
I'm trying
Fulton
to remember
Fulton
if
doesn't have a history
I'm trying to
doing.
remember if Tarheeb still returned kicks
Mm.
because part of me thinks he did, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember.
Also, Jarrett Patterson, if he makes the roster, he has in the past. I don't know if he'll make the roster, but it's very possible his special teams ability makes him onto the roster. That could absolutely happen for him. I always liked Jarrett Patterson coming out of college, and I think he has a role as a special teamer if they allow him to do that. Is there anyone else you look at and you say, like, that's someone that I want to see, even if it's not as a returner, a lead blocker, a gunner,
Oh yeah,
maybe on the kick team? Like, what do you think? I think Jeremiah John Baptiste can contribute in that way as
I'm
a
sure. I'm
kickoff
sure
team guy.
Cornelius. I'm sure Cornelius Johnson's going to contribute as a gunner.
Hmm.
Like he's again one of those
Yeah,
guys, height, weight, speed kind of guy.
him.
6'3", 208. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
going to do
him.
that.
If Ladd wasn't a starter, I would say him, but he's an obvious starter for them.
Hmm.
Uh, Listen, all their receivers are like gritty guys, so I really think any of those guys can go out there and do that. But it's just who doesn't start.
If Dion Henley's not playing a ton, he could be a good gunner.
Oh yeah, well Gunner, or if they want to put him on kicking team, I think he's definitely going to be on a kicking team. I don't think he's going to
Yeah,
get enough playing time to not. I also think Cam Hart, if he isn't a starter, definitely an effective gunner. Absolutely, they have a
yes,
lot of potential
absolutely.
gunners. They
They have
do.
they have a lot of just good, like potentially good special teams
Well, I
players.
think it's because they have a lot of tough receivers and a lot of tough corners.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I think that's just a microcosm of how Harbaugh builds this team. I think like that's the big reason why. But let's move on to let's talk about the kickers and punters. Those are kind of important.
JK.
J.K. Scott, he's a fine punter. I mean, once again, not overly exciting, but Dicker the kicker, he's
Dicker
good,
the kicker.
and he's
He's
a
good.
memes purely because of the name. Uh, Another guy, he gets the job done consistently.
Yep.
I'm not overly worried about him. Yeah.
I think that's a kind of a. I think it's kind of a theme with this team. There's a lot of guys that get the job done.
Hmm. Yeah.
Then that.
And I think that's how these Harbaugh teams are built.
Mm-hmm.
But let's move on to the prediction. Ceiling, we agreed 10-7.
10-7. There's a world where this team is a playoff team,
Hmm.
like borderline playoff team.
Yeah. And then floor, we agreed on 5-12.
5-12. Yep. Because there is holes on this roster.
Yeah.
There's not much depth at all.
Hmm.
There's not like even though there is a good infusion of high level talent, I don't think there's enough. Like this is really gonna the ceiling of this team really depends on one, how much Justin Herbert elevates the roster around him, and two, the health. I think the health of this team is a
Hmm.
big deal because if you get a couple injuries, suddenly your
Yeah,
starting roster
they
is
don't
not
have
looking
depth.
good.
They don't
No.
have depth. And especially if one of their stars go down, if one of their tackles goes down, if someone like they could afford injuries at the edge position, but at the inside linebacker spot, that could really hurt them. Herbert goes down, they're screwed. I don't think they have enough depth at quarterback at all.
No,
Easton Stick, really?
we're not
Max Duggan?
moved by Easton Stick.
Yeah, it's not very good, especially again on a scheme that doesn't really help the quarterback much.
Yeah.
What's your record prediction for them?
My record prediction for this team is 7-10.
So we completely agree then. We both have 7-10. Let's take a little bit of a deep dive looking at the schedule. First two games, honestly, yeah, first two. I like it. I like it a lot. You face the Raiders week 1 in LA, and then you go into Carolina. I feel like they could definitely start the season off 2-0.
That's those are two games they could win. Absolutely.
Yeah. And listen, there's a lot of games they could win. This is an easy schedule. Like, this is. The only
Yes.
thing is you do
Yes.
face off against the Chiefs twice. One of those
And
matchups
that's
is
always
week
rough.
4, right after they play against the Steelers in Pittsburgh. That should be a really good game. But week 4, they go ahead and play the Chiefs at home. Even
I think.
even
Yeah.
though
I
it's in
think
their
the
stadium,
Chiefs.
the Chiefs
Yeah.
are probably beating them both matchups. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe the Chargers can give them a little bit of a run, but no, the Chiefs. But the Chiefs always start the season off a little bit weak. Maybe they can. In
There's a
LA,
chance, but
maybe.
I also think this Chiefs. We'll get to the Chiefs when we get to the Chiefs. Some people might have to wait a while, of course, but I
Yeah.
think the Chiefs are in for a very special season. So
Yeah. Now, by week 5, you probably are coming into that with like a 2-2 record. I'm
looking
expecting.
around there. Yeah,
Yeah. Then you go into Denver, week 6.
that's a very winnable game. I think that's a very
Yeah,
winnable game.
that's winnable. I think that's winnable. It should be a close game. It should. I think
Yes.
they're gonna keep every game close. I think they're gonna be like, yeah, I think they're gonna be that scrappy team that just keeps every single game close.
You
Point
think of
differential.
Dan Campbell's year
Yeah,
with the Lions.
exactly.
I
His first year. I think they're gonna be a little bit more successful, but
right.
yeah, they're gonna go ahead. Their point differential is gonna look really good, even though their record might not look great. They
Then you go to the Cardinals
into
and
Arizona.
we'll keep our thoughts to ourselves, but I think that's
We
a
think
very
Arizona's
tough
a
game.
good football team.
We think
Yeah.
we think Arizona's a good football team.
But then playing against the Saints in week 8 at home.
Should
Yeah.
be a good game.
Yeah. And listen, they have a stretch after their week 9 game against Cleveland, which I think they probably lose that. I just think, even though they pass block well, I don't think the run game can really get going against that defense. I don't.
No.
And I think that's going to be a game where they kind of just get ran all over.
Right.
But after that game, you have a 3-game stretch where you're at home. You don't have to go on the road. First game in that stretch is against Tennessee. Yeah, they win that. I feel very comfortable saying they win that.
Yeah.
But then Cincinnati right after. Listen, they probably lose that, but I could see a world where they get an upset either that week or the week after that on primetime television, the Harbaugh v. Harbaugh game.
Yeah.
I could see that one being a really good one. I think they could get upset either that week or the week prior. Then they head into Atlanta.
I think that's a tough one. I think that's a
It's
big
tough.
Bijan game.
It's
That's
tough.
a big Bijan
Yeah.
game.
But if they get some momentum after winning on primetime against Baltimore, maybe.
Maybe. Then you go to Arrowhead in the cold. I
In-
fully expect the Chiefs to come out there and win.
In the cold, we have to see. Will the Chiefs take them for granted, maybe try and do a little bit too much magic? I could see the Chiefs kind of get caught sleeping in this game.
It could happen. I just think I think this Chiefs team. We'll get there. Anyway, Bucks Chargers.
But that's another one. I could. It's in LA. I could see it.
That's one of those games where I could see that run game really struggling though. With
Fair.
Vea there,
That's fair.
I think
Yeah. That one it could kind of go either way. Play against
Chargers,
Denver
Broncos at
in
home.
LA. I feel like LA wins that with.
I feel like
it's a
that's
division
where
game, but still, I feel like LA wins.
It's in division, but we're getting to that end of the season where you're really feeling the Harbaugh culture.
But then maybe
the
Bo
team
Nix
getting
is
momentum.
feeling a lot of. Maybe Bo Nix is feeling
knows?
himself like that. That's
Who
where it's like
knows?
I again, it's one way or the other. This one I feel very strongly that the Chargers are going to go ahead and beat the Patriots.
Yep, and then Chargers Raiders should be a fun game.
It should.
I think that
To end the
to
season, that should be a really good
be
one.
a fun game.
Yeah, I could definitely see Pierce playing for his job right here.
That's one of those things. Not only playing for his job, but like, this is one of those games That's for one, always really fun to watch. But
Mhm.
two, like Raiders do a really good job. And well, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll touch on them, but like it should be a good running football team. And like, how good are the Chargers going to be at stopping the run this year? How healthy are they when they enter this game? And that's the case kind of with all these games for the Chargers is how healthy is this football team?
Mhm.
Because all of like that Patriots game, if you've got a couple of starters that are hurt, it's suddenly not a for sure thing because your depth just isn't good enough, right? So
Yeah. No, listen, I'm that one. I think it should be a really good one. I think there's going to be plenty of really good games here. There's so many games that could go either way. And because of the schedule, I could see them finishing 10-7. Like I can. We
yeah, it
agree though,
totally.
7-10 with that schedule. That's all. Feel free to
I
wrap it up.
Yeah, I just want to say I do think we've already touched on it a lot, but I do think the storyline of this season is going to be that depth
Mm-hmm.
because no NFL team stays healthy all season.
None.
That's just not something that
No.
happens. You need to depend on your depth players, and the Chargers just don't have enough. If they did have depth, I might feel even comfortable maybe give them a couple more wins on our prediction. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just, but you cannot bet on this team to stay healthy
Yeah.
for a full season, and especially with some of the players like Derwin James. He has
Mm-hmm.
improved. Like it's been a
They
while since
have
he's been healthy
injury
a full season.
histories. They do.
Exactly.
Even Herbert has an
Yeah.
injury history. I mean,
So
yeah. J.K. Dobbins, we know he has a history. Like,
so it's
yeah.
really just like I think this team needs to develop not only a season under Harbaugh and the scheme and the system, but like get some players in the building, man. Get some talent in the building, in the depth chart. So that's going to be it for the Chargers. Thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. The next video, the 25th episode of the preseason power rankings, will be up on Pat's channel, which is linked in the description. All of our social medias and anywhere you could find us, his podcast, my Twitter, my TikTok, all of that's going to be in the description. And we appreciate every one of you for watching.